Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
Look around. How many perfect families do you see? Smiling parents, happy children. We were one of those families. Our neighbors admired us, and friends held us up as an example. My husband was the best father in the world. At least, that's what I thought. And then my son ended up in the hospital with ordinary stomach pains. I thought the worst thing I could hear was the word tumor. But I was wrong. This is a story about how easy it is to be blinded by love and how important it is not to stay silent when you see something wrong. Do you agree that silence is sometimes equivalent to a crime? If yes, hit like. If not, I await your point of view in the comments. And now, I'll tell you what price I paid for the illusion of our family well-being. The autumn sun cast slanted golden rays on our quiet, suburban neighborhood outside Chicago. Outside the window of the two-story colonial where we had lived for about 7 years, the first yellow leaves were slowly swirling. I stood in the kitchen, stirring soup in a pot and listening to sounds from the living room. Only the murmur of the television could be heard from there. My husband Stephen was, as always, running late from work at his bank downtown, and our 10-year-old son Max seemed to have grown into the couch. "Max, did you do your homework?" I asked, wiping my hands on my apron. Silence was my answer. Sighing heavily, I went into the living room. Max was lying on the couch, having put a pillow under his head, and was indifferently watching the screen. Just a couple of months ago, at this time he would have been running around the yard with a football. But now he increasingly spent evenings like this. He had started getting tired quickly, complaining that he always wanted to sleep, that I approached and sat on the edge of the couch. His face seemed pale to me. Barely noticeable bruises lay under his eyes. "Does your stomach hurt?" I asked quietly, placing my palm on his forehead. His forehead was hot, not very much, but the fever could be felt. The last 2 weeks this had been repeating with frightening regularity. Unclear stomach pains. Low but stable evening temperatures. I attributed this to school stress, autumn blues, anything but thinking about something bad. But a call from his teacher, Mrs. Johnson, made me wary. "Mrs. Williams, Max sometimes grabs his stomach right during class," she said in a worried voice. "He sits there all hunched up. I ask, 'What happened?' And he just shakes his head. 'Maybe you should take him to the doctor.'" I assured her that we would definitely go, but anxiety settled in my soul, and we went to our family doctor's office. Dr. Martinez, our pediatrician, briefly examined him, felt his stomach, and rendered her verdict. Gastritis from stress, less junk food, more healthy meals, and maybe try some children's probiotics. I tried to object, talked about the temperature, about weakness, but she just waved me off, ordering some blood work and giving us a referral to the Children's Hospital for more comprehensive testing if the symptoms persisted. The sound of the garage door opening. Stephen, my husband, had always been the embodiment of reliability and success. Tall, fit in an expensive suit. He worked as a loan officer at a major bank downtown and was known in our neighborhood as an exemplary father. "I'm home, my champions." He entered the living room, loosening his tie. Stephen sat down next to Max, and when he saw his father, the boy smiled weakly. But I noticed how his body tensed for a split second. I attributed this to pain. I always found explanations for everything. It was easier that way. "He has a fever again," I said, and Stephen's face immediately darkened with worry. I spoke with the doctor. "She wants us to take him to Children's Memorial if this continues." She gave us a referral. Stephen frowned, gently stroking his son's hair. "Children's Memorial? That's going to be expensive, Sarah." "Well, I've been saying we should go straight to a private clinic. Why deal with insurance hassles and waiting rooms?" "Steve, our insurance covers the referral. They have an excellent pediatric department. And besides, it's just for testing." "Fine." He didn't argue, and I felt relief. "Then we won't delay. I want him to get the best care. Our insurance should cover most of it, and if not, We can afford to pay out of pocket. Don't worry about the cost. The main thing is our son's health." His decisiveness and care always calmed me. Stephen loved his family more than anything in the world, and I knew that he was even more worried about Max's condition than I was. Despite his busy schedule, he immediately agreed to take time off work to go to the hospital with us. The next day, I called in sick to work, and we drove to Children's Memorial Hospital. The large, modern building greeted us with bright corridors and the usual hospital antiseptic smell. We waited in the registration area, dealing with insurance paperwork and co-pays. Stephen checked his phone constantly and muttered about the inefficiency of the healthcare system. But when we finally got to the pediatric department, his complaints stopped. We were met by the attending physician, Dr. Patricia Chin, a woman in her 40s with a no-nonsense demeanor and kind but serious eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She spoke directly and professionally. "So, abdominal pain and low-grade fever," she said, reviewing our paperwork and referral. "We'll admit him for observation and run a full workup, blood tests, ultrasound, x-rays, and I want to schedule a CT scan of the abdomen to rule out anything serious." Her tone was confident and reassuring. "We agree to everything, doctor," Stephen immediately responded. "Do whatever you think is necessary." Hospitalization was scheduled for Monday. We spent the whole weekend together, like an ordinary happy family. Sergei played ball with Maxim in the yard, although the son got tired quickly and asked to go home. I baked his favorite pancakes, but I could see that the former carefree smile wasn't returning to Maxim's face. Sometimes he would briefly, as if afraid of being noticed, look attentively at his father, studying the expression on his face. "Everything will be fine. Sunshine," I whispered, hugging him. "The doctors at the hospital will definitely cure your stomach." He nodded silently, burying his face in my shoulder. On Sunday evening, Sergei, sorting through documents for the hospital, said, "I'll go with you tomorrow. I have a meeting in the afternoon. I'll have to leave, but I'll definitely come back afterward." I was grateful to him for this care. Our family had always been a fortress for me, and I believed that together we would overcome any difficulties. I just wanted this mysterious illness to pass quickly, and we would live our quiet, happy life again. That on Monday morning I woke up earlier than usual. I packed a small bag for Maxim for the hospital. At breakfast, Sergei encouragingly told his son, "Maxim, it's a hospital, but it's not scary. Doctors there are like magicians. They know how to take away pain." Maxim nodded, but anxiety stood in his eyes. I hugged his shoulders. "Mom will be with you all the time. Everything will be fine." At 8:30 a.m., we were at the hospital's admission desk. After processing insurance forms and paying our copay, we were finally escorted to the pediatric ward. Clean hallways with cheerful murals, the smell of cleaning supplies and institutional food. We were assigned to a semi-private room. One bed was already occupied by a 7-year-old boy with a broken arm. "Make yourselves comfortable," said the nurse. "Dr. Chun will be making rounds shortly." The room was much nicer than I had expected. Adjustable beds, a small TV, and a large window overlooking the hospital's courtyard with a small playground. "Well, not exactly the Ritz," Stephen joked, but immediately caught himself when he saw my worried expression. "But it's clean and modern. The main thing is that the medical care is good. We'll get through a couple of days here." Stephen, still in his business suit, sat on the edge of Max's bed. "I need to go to this important client meeting, buddy, but I'll be back this evening." He gently ruffled Max's hair, and at that moment I saw it again. Max barely noticeably tensed at his touch, just for a moment, and then forced a smile back onto his face. Stephen left after kissing us both goodbye. He hugged Max and quietly said, "Dad's really worried about you too, okay?" His love and concern warmed my heart. "Your husband seems really devoted," commented the nurse who came to check Max's vitals. I smiled back, not noticing at that moment the complex, troubled expression on my son's face as he watched his father leave. Around noon, the first procedures began. Blood was drawn from Max's arm. He gritted his teeth, but didn't shed a tear. Then there was an X-ray. The young technician, seeing how nervous Max was, tried to cheer him up. "Okay, let's pretend you're a superhero getting scanned for your secret powers." X-rays were taken not only of the abdomen, but also of the chest and, for some reason, arms and legs for a complete picture. As the technician explained, after lunch came the most serious test of the day, the CT scan. We went down to the radiology department. The large CT machine looked intimidating, and Max immediately became frightened. He grabbed my hand, and his eyes filled with tears. "Mom, is this going to hurt?" "Not at all, honey. You'll just lie still while the machine takes pictures of inside your body. It doesn't hurt one bit. I'll be right here watching." I spoke confidently, although my own heart was racing with anxiety. The scan went smoothly. Max, to my surprise, was very brave. He followed all the technician's instructions perfectly. "Take a deep breath, hold it, now breathe normally." He lay perfectly still, staring at the ceiling, and only gripped my hand tightly when the table moved through the machine's tunnel. Around 5 p.m., as promised, Stephen returned. He brought a bouquet of flowers for me and a new Hot Wheels car for Max. He immediately filled the sterile room with his energy and optimism. "How are my 2 troopers doing?" he asked cheerfully. "The meeting went great, closed a huge commercial loan, but I was thinking about you guys the whole time." He helped Max with dinner bland hospital food that our son barely touched. Then he sat down and started reviewing Max's math homework that we had brought along. From the outside, this looked like a perfect scene. The ideal father who, even after a demanding workday, found time and energy for his son. But I, sitting in the visitor's chair by the window, felt some inexplicable tension in the air. Max answered his father's questions with short responses. His shoulders were tense, and he avoided eye contact. "Dad, my stomach still hurts," he complained quietly when Stephen closed the workbook. "I know, buddy, it's tough," Stephen answered gently. "But hang in there. The doctors will figure this out and make you feel better. You just need to be strong and brave." At 8 p.m., visiting hours ended and Stephen had to leave. He kissed us both and promised, "I'll definitely be back tomorrow after work. If anything happens, call me immediately and I'll rush right over." His care and devotion touched me deeply. We had been married for 12 years, and throughout all those years, Stephen had been the perfect husband and father, always putting family first. When he left, the room became quiet and somehow empty. At 9 p.m., the night shift began. Dr. Chin came for evening rounds. She was now in scrubs instead of her white coat, apparently staying for night coverage. "How are we feeling? Pain any better? Did the medication help?" she asked, checking Max's chart. "A little better," Max answered tiredly. He was completely exhausted from the long day of tests, but still tried to be brave for me. "If you need anything, press the call button immediately," Dr. Chin said, addressing me. "I'm covering tonight, so I'll be here until morning." Her confident, professional manner was reassuring. Having such an experienced and dedicated doctor nearby made our anxious hospital stay somewhat more bearable. Maxim fell asleep almost instantly. Fatigue from the examinations and tension from the unfamiliar environment did their work, and I lay on the uncomfortable cot nearby and prayed to all gods that tomorrow the doctors would finally find the cause of his pain and all this would end soon. I fell into restless, shallow slumber, dreaming of my son's speedy recovery. Tuesday dragged on agonizingly long. In the morning, blood was taken again. Then there was an ultrasound, during which the doctor silently and for a long time moved the sensor over Maxim's stomach, frowning. To my questions, he answered evasively, "I don't see anything acute. We need to wait for the CT results and the conclusion of your attending physician." Sergey called in the morning, said he had an emergency at work, but he would sort everything out and come in the evening. Just when Svetlana Petrovna was supposed to report the results to us, I kept replaying the last weeks in my head. Maxim's fatigue, his apathy, these sudden pains. "Maybe it's something serious," some hidden disease that couldn't be recognized at the clinic. I drove away the most terrible thoughts, but they kept returning. Maxim was also quiet and thoughtful. He barely spoke, just looked out the window at the gray autumn sky. A couple of times I caught his strange long look at me, full of some non-childish melancholy. "Baby, is something wrong? You can tell me anything, you know." I tried to get him to open up. He just shook his head and turned to the window again. Closer to evening, another patient appeared in the room, very small, about 5 years old with a high fever. His mother, a young and very worried woman, fussed and gasped the whole time, which caused me a fit of irritation. I wanted silence to gather my thoughts before talking with the doctor. Around 6 p.m. Sergey arrived, as always energetic, confident, with a bag of fruits and yogurts. "Well, what do the doctors say? Any news?" "Not yet. Svetlana Petrovna said she'll come after 7 o'clock when all the results are ready." Finally, around 7:30 p.m., the room door opened quietly. A young nurse appeared. "Mrs. Williams, Dr. Chen would like to see you in her office. Alone, please." Her words hit like lightning. "Alone? Why alone?" "I should come too." Stephen immediately stood up. "I'm his father. I have a right to know." "The doctor specifically requested just the mother," the nurse replied firmly, not looking at Stephen. Everything inside me went cold. Something was wrong, something very serious that they didn't want to discuss in front of my husband. I looked at Stephen. His face showed confusion mixed with irritation. "Sarah, go find out what's going on. I'll stay with Max." I nodded, unable to speak. My legs felt like rubber. I followed the nurse down the hallway, and each step echoed in my head like a drumbeat. Doctor Chen's office was at the end of the corridor. The door was closed. The nurse knocked and, opening it slightly, whispered, "She's here." Then she quickly left, leaving me alone facing this terrifying unknown. That I took a deep breath and entered. In the office, besides Dr. Chen, there were 2 others, a woman in a business suit and a man who looked like law enforcement. Dr. Chen sat at her desk, and her usual professional composure was replaced by an expression of deep concern. She gestured to a chair. "Mrs. Williams, please sit down. I'm sorry to call you here alone, but we need to have a difficult conversation." Her voice was quiet, but each word felt like it was burning into my brain. "What's wrong with my son?" I whispered, my throat dry. "Is it cancer? Something serious?" "No." Dr. Chen shook her head, and for a moment I felt relief. But her next words erased that relief, plunging me into an even darker pit. "From a medical standpoint, no cancer, no infections, he's essentially healthy. But what we found on the imaging, Sarah, is much worse." She turned her computer monitor toward me. On the screen was an X-ray image. "Listen to me carefully." Her voice became even quieter. "We discovered evidence of multiple healed fractures in Max. 3 ribs, the radius bone in his left arm, and the tibia in his right leg." I stared at the X-ray but couldn't understand what I was seeing. The doctor's words seemed impossible. "Fractures? But that can't be right. Max never had any broken bones. He's never broken his arms or legs." "These fractures occurred at different times," she continued, ignoring my protests. "The oldest ones on the ribs are about 2 years old. The most recent is several months old. They all healed on their own, without medical treatment. Additionally, the cause of his abdominal pain is internal bruising on his organs, also of varying ages. These types of injuries result from repeated, forceful blows to the torso." The world around me started spinning. I gripped the chair arms to keep from falling. "Blows? Fractures? Are you saying, Sarah, according to our mandatory reporting laws, we're required to contact Child Protective Services when we suspect abuse?" The woman in the business suit spoke up. "I'm Detective Martinez with the Police Department's Special Victims Unit, and this is Ms. Johnson from CPS. We need to ask you some questions." "CPS. Police. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What police? Why, this is some terrible mistake. Nobody has hurt my son. We love him. Mrs. Williams, Detective Martinez said gently but firmly, please try to stay calm. We're here to help Max. The pattern of his injuries is consistent with child abuse cases we've seen before. Our first priority is ensuring the child's safety. Abuse. I felt like I was suffocating. This is impossible. We have a wonderful family. Dr. Chin looked at me with compassion that cut right through me. Sarah, I can see how much you love Max, but the medical evidence doesn't lie. Unfortunately, in most cases of child abuse, it happens within the family. We can't take any chances with his safety. Right now, officers are on their way to speak with your husband. With Stephen? But what does he have to do with this? Detective Martinez looked away before quietly responding. Sarah, when the perpetrator is the father, the mother may also be at risk. We needed to speak with you first and ensure your safety. At that moment, my cell phone buzzed in my pocket. Stephen's name appeared on the screen. I instinctively reached for it, but the detective shook her head. I wouldn't recommend answering that right now. I stared at the phone screen showing my husband's name and couldn't move. My entire body felt frozen. My brain refused to process what was happening. Police, CPS, abuse fractures. These words felt like a death sentence, a sentence on my family, my life, everything I believed in. But why Stephen? Why do you think it's him? I managed to croak, looking up at Detective Martinez. He adores Max. He would never hurt him. Mrs. Williams, we're not making accusations without evidence, she replied in that practiced, calm voice that was supposed to be reassuring, but sounded like nails on a chalkboard to me. But we have to investigate all possibilities. Right now, we need to return to the room. The most important thing is not to upset Max. The walk back down the corridor felt endless. I moved in a daze, not really seeing where I was going. One thought kept pounding in my head. This is a mistake. A horrible, monstrous mistake. They must have seen old sports injuries we forgot about. Maybe Max fell at school and was too scared to tell us. Yes, exactly, he was just afraid. I would explain everything to them. I would protect my family from this absurd accusation. Why phone buzzed again? Stephen again. I ignored the call as instructed. When we reached the room, I saw a plainclothes officer standing by the door. He nodded to Detective Martinez. My heart stopped that we entered. Stephen was standing by Max's bed, talking on his phone. His voice was tense and frustrated. When he saw us, he ended the call abruptly. Sarah, what's going on? Why aren't you answering your phone? What did the doctor say? What are these people doing here? Before I could speak, Detective Martinez stepped forward. Are you Stephen Williams? Yes. And what exactly is this about? Stephen straightened up, his face showing complete bewilderment. Sir, we need you to come with us. We have some questions regarding your son's medical condition. Two uniformed officers who had quietly entered the room behind us moved to either side of Stephen. Go where? I'm not going anywhere until someone explains what the hell is going on here. My husband's voice rang with outrage. He looked at me with pleading eyes. Sarah, tell them this is crazy. I stood frozen, unable to say a word. At that moment, the bathroom door opened, and Max appeared. He had apparently been using the restroom while I was gone. When he saw the police officers flanking his father, he froze. His eyes went wide with terror, and then it happened the moment that shattered my world completely. Stephen, seeing his son, underwent a chilling transformation. For just a split second, his mask of the perfect father slipped away, and I saw something cold and menacing flash across his face. He took a step toward Max, and his voice, low but full of threat, hissed, Did you tell them? Did you say something to them? Max recoiled against the wall and let out a small, frightened whimper. That was all the evidence needed. One of the officers immediately stepped forward and stated firmly, "Stephen Williams, you're under arrest on suspicion of child abuse." The sound of handcuffs clicking in the quiet hospital room was deafening. I watched my husband's hands being restrained with metal, and reality crashed down on me with devastating force. "What are you doing? This is insane!" Stephen shouted, struggling against the restraints. "Sarah, you know me. I would never hurt him. Tell them." But I wasn't looking at him anymore. I was looking at my son. He stood pressed against the wall, trembling from head to toe, and in his eyes I saw not just fear but relief. "Mrs. Williams," Dr. Chen's voice broke through my shock. "There's something else. We noticed that Max becomes very tense whenever his father is around. And last night, after your husband left, I discovered a fresh bruise on Max's arm that wasn't there earlier. It was finger-shaped, as if someone had grabbed him very hard." She spoke quietly, almost whispering, so Max wouldn't overhear the bruise. I remembered Stephen checking Max's homework the night before. I had been sitting by the window and couldn't see everything. I never saw anything or didn't want to see it. Suddenly dozens of small, insignificant details surfaced in my memory that I hadn't paid attention to before. How Maxim would flinch when Sergei unexpectedly put his hand on his shoulder. His evasive answers when I asked about another bruise. Hit myself in gym class. His sudden apathy and unwillingness to go to football, which he had loved so much and which his father had insisted on. His words that Dad would be upset if he got a bad grade. All this formed a monstrous, unthinkable picture. "Mama!" Maxim called in a thin, trembling voice that I came to my senses. My child, my little, frightened boy. I rushed to him, knelt down and hugged him tightly. He clung to me like a drowning man and burst into loud, open sobs, as he had never cried before. This was the cry of a child who had carried unbearable pain inside himself for too long. "Everything's fine, my dear. Everything's fine," I whispered, swallowing my own tears. "Mama's here. Mama's with you." They were leading Sergei away. He shouted something after me, some justifications, accusations, but I no longer heard him. My whole world had narrowed to this small, trembling body in my arms, and why husband, the man I had loved and trusted for 12 years, turned out to be a monster, and I, as a mother, was blind. Inspector Morozova and the guardianship representative approached us. "Elena Viktorovna, we'll need to draw up a protocol," the inspector said gently. "And a psychologist will talk with Maxim now. We have a specialist in our department who works with children who have experienced violence." I only nodded. While Maxim was being taken to another office, I sat in our room and answered questions. When did it start? How often? Did I notice anything? Each question was like a knife blow. I answered honestly. "I don't know, I didn't notice." And with each answer, I sank deeper into an abyss of guilt and shame. How could I not notice? How could I live in the same house with a person who was crippling our son and see nothing? I remembered the teacher's call. Maxim sometimes grabs his stomach right during class. I thought it was gastritis. I remembered the neighbor's words, Aunt Valia's, thrown out casually. "Somehow your Maximka has become quiet, not himself. Your Sergei is strict, probably raising him like a man." I had just brushed it off then, saying everything was fine in our family. Everyone around, it turned out, saw something, but I didn't. His mother, Svetlana Petrovna, brought me a glass of water with Korvalol. "Drink," she said in her usual stern tone, but there was sympathy in her eyes. "You'll need strength now. Don't blame yourself. People like your husband are skillful manipulators. They know how to create a perfect picture for the outside world." Her words were weak comfort. What difference did it make what kind of manipulator he was if my son had suffered for years while I was nearby and couldn't protect him? An hour later, Maxim was brought back. With him was a woman psychologist, Anna Borisovna. She had kind eyes and a very calm voice. Maxim looked exhausted, but there was no longer that hunted fear in his gaze. Mama, he said, approaching me. I told everything. Dad, he beat me, but he said it was a secret. He said that if I told, you would be very upset because you get tired at work, and that they would take me to an orphanage because I was bad and let everyone down. Each of his words was like a red-hot nail being driven into my heart. Sergei hadn't just beaten him, he had methodically and cold-bloodedly destroyed his psyche, instilling guilt and fear. He had isolated him from the only person who could help him from me. He said it was necessary for me to grow up strong. Maxim continued in a quiet, monotonous voice. A real man, so I wouldn't be a mama's boy. This phrase, real man, I had heard it from Sergei hundreds of times when he forced Maxim to do sports against his will, when he scolded him for tears, when he demanded unquestioning obedience. I thought it was just strict upbringing. I thought he wished him well. Maxim, what Dad did is wrong. Absolutely wrong, said the psychologist, crouching next to him. Adults should never hit children. You're not to blame for anything. You're a very, very brave boy because you were able to endure all this. The psychologist turned to me. Elena Viktorovna, Maxim will need long-term therapy. And you too. You both have a long road ahead, but the most important thing is that now he's safe. Safety, a word I had considered synonymous with our home. It turned out our home had been the most terrible prison for my son. That night, I didn't close my eyes. I sat on a chair by Maxim's bed and held his hand, even when he fell asleep. I was afraid to let him go even for a second. I looked at his face, on which all the anxious wrinkles had now smoothed out in sleep, and made a vow. I will pull him out. I will do everything so he learns to smile again. I will become the wall for him that I couldn't be all these years. My former life had collapsed, and on its ruins I had to build a new one. Just for the two of us. The next morning began not with dawn, but with gray, faceless light that barely broke through the dirty hospital window. All night I had sat on the hard chair, listening to Maxim's even breathing. Each of his breaths was proof to me that he was alive, he was nearby, he was safe at least physically. What was happening in his soul, in his little wounded head, I was afraid to even imagine. When he woke up and opened his eyes, there was no longer that hunted fear in them that I had seen yesterday. There was bottomless fatigue and timid, weak hope. He just looked at me, and in that gaze I read everything I couldn't understand for years. Pain, loneliness, desperate plea for protection. I love you, son, more than anything in the world, I said. And these were the most honest and hard-won words of my life. Forgive me for not seeing. You're not to blame, he answered quietly. And these adult, forgiving words of his made me hurt even more. Dad said you shouldn't know. Around 9 a.m., Inspector Morozova and the guardianship representative, whose name was Marina Igorevna, entered the room again. Behind them came the already familiar psychologist, Anna Borisovna. Good morning, said the inspector. Elena Viktorovna, Maxim. We'll need to process all the necessary documents today. This is a formal procedure, but it's necessary. Maxim, we'll need to record your story. Anna Borisovna will be with you the whole time. Do you agree? Maxim looked at me. I nodded encouragingly. Okay, he agreed, quietly. The questioning procedure took place right in the room. Our little neighbor with his mother were at procedures, so no one bothered us. The inspector sat at the table, laid out papers. I sat on the bed next to Maxim, holding his hand. Maxim, just tell what you remember, Morozova began gently. When did Dad start punishing you? I gritted my teeth hearing this word. Punishing. Maxim was silent, collecting his thoughts, then began speaking quietly, almost without emotion, as if reading someone else's terrible story. A long time ago, when I still went to kindergarten. At first not hard. He could spank if I misbehaved. He said men don't cry. And then when I went to school, it got worse. He paused, looked at his hands. What did he beat you for? Asked the psychologist. For everything. If I got a C, if I didn't clean my room, if I lost at football. He said I shamed him, that I was growing up a wimp. Once I broke a toy car he gave me. He then locked me in the dark closet and then pulled me out and hit me with a belt. He said I didn't appreciate what was done for me. I squeezed my eyes shut. I remembered that day. Sergei told me that Maxim had locked himself in the closet playing hide-and-seek, and that he had scolded him a little for carelessness. And the bruises on my son's back that I saw later, he explained by saying he had fallen off his bike. And I believed him. I always believed him. "Where did he hit you?" the inspector continued. "In the stomach, in the back, on the legs, where it's not visible under clothes." He said, "We can't upset Mom. She has enough worries. No one should know about our man-to-man talks." Man-to-man talks. That's what he called it. My God, what an idiot I was. "Maxim, do you remember how you broke your arm or leg?" Morozova asked, checking some papers. Apparently Svetlana Petrovna's conclusion that my son frowned, trying to remember. My arm? That was in winter. We were at the dacha. Dad was teaching me to chop wood. I couldn't do it. The axe slipped. It hurt a lot. My arm swelled up. Dad looked and said it was just a bad bruise. He wrapped it with an elastic bandage and told me to endure it. He said a real man should be able to endure pain. My arm hurt for a long time. And my leg, that was when we were playing football in the yard. I missed the ball and we lost. He came to my room that evening and kicked me. Said my legs were growing from the wrong place. I fell and hit the edge of the bed hard. He also said it was just a bruise. Each fact, each memory of my son revealed layers of my own lies to myself. I remembered both the swollen arm and the limping. But Sergei always found an explanation convincing, logical. Growing clumsy. "Takes after you," he would laugh, and I would laugh with him. The questioning lasted more than an hour. When everything was finished, Maxim was completely exhausted. Anna Borisovna took him to the playroom so he could distract himself a bit, and I stayed with the inspector and Marina Igorevna from guardianship. "Elena Viktorovna, now we need to talk about the legal side," Marina Igorevna began. Her tone was dry and businesslike. "Your son's testimony and the medical conclusion are sufficient to initiate a criminal case under the article of torturing a minor. Your husband faces real prison time." I nodded silently. I didn't care what happened to him. "Now regarding Maxim," she continued, and everything inside me clenched. Here it was, the most terrible moment. By law, we're obliged to temporarily place him under guardianship, supervision. "What?" I jumped up. "You want to take him away from me? Take him to an orphanage?" My voice broke into a scream. This was my biggest fear, fed by dozens of horror stories about children being taken away. "Calm down, please." Inspector Morozova put her hand on my shoulder. "No one is going to separate you from your son. You're as much a victim as he is. The procedure is as follows. There will be a meeting of the Commission on Juvenile Affairs. Formally, guardianship will take control of the situation. But since you pose no threat to the child and are ready to care for him, Maxim will stay with you. Our main task is to provide him with a safe environment. This means completely excluding any contact with his father." Her words calmed me a little, but fear remained. I found myself in the grindstones of a soulless state machine, and it was unclear whether it would crush me or spare me. "What do I need to do?" I asked, feeling absolutely helpless. "First, you'll need to find housing." "You can't return to that house," said Marina Igorevna. "Second, file for divorce. Third, provide Maxim with regular sessions with a psychologist. We'll give you contacts for Free State help centers. You'll need help yourself, too. Don't refuse it." The list of tasks seemed endless. New apartment, divorce, courts, psychotherapy. My head was spinning. Later that day, Inspector Morozova came to see me again. "News from the interrogation," she said briefly. "Your husband first denied everything categorically. Said it was slander, that you conspired with your son to take the house away from him. He accused you of raising the child too softly and that he had to take matters into his own hands. Scum escaped from me. When they showed him the X-rays and forensic conclusions, he broke down. The inspector continued. He admitted to using force, but of course called it upbringing. Said he wanted to make a strong person out of his son, not a crybaby. Typical rhetoric for people like him. He doesn't really acknowledge his guilt. He thinks he was right. I listened to her and understood that I had never truly known the person I had lived with for 12 years. I had lived with a monster who wore the mask of a caring husband and father. That evening, Svetlana Petrovna came to see us. She brought printed results of all the tests. "Well, Elena," she said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "the picture is clear. Besides the fractures, he has chronic inflammation due to liver and spleen damage. Not severe, but constant blunt blows did their work. This caused the pain and temperature. The body was constantly fighting internal injuries. He'll need treatment and a special diet. But the good news is that his body is young. Everything will recover. The main thing is that we removed the cause." She looked at me with her stern, piercing gaze. "Don't blame yourself, do you hear? Your only fault is that you trusted too much. And now you need to be strong, not for yourself, for him." Her words, spoken without a hint of baby talk or pity, affected me better than any sedative. Yes, I needed to be strong, and I would be. That night, when Maxim was already asleep, I took out my laptop. The first thing I did was open apartment rental sites, small, inexpensive ones on the other end of the city, as far as possible from our past. Then I found contacts for a family law attorney, then forums for mothers who had faced domestic violence. I read their stories, and my feeling of loneliness receded a little. I wasn't alone. There were thousands like me, blinded, deceived, but who found the strength to break free. We were discharged a week later. A week that seemed to me both an eternity and one painfully long day. During this time, I managed to give official testimony, sign a pile of papers at the guardianship office, talk with dozens of different specialists, and make the most important decision of my life. We would never return to our old house. The first weeks were the most difficult. Court proceedings, divorce process, property division. I hired a lawyer who took on all contact with Sergei and his representatives. I had to see my husband only once in the courtroom. He sat behind bars, thinner, with a dead look. He didn't look at me. During his final statement, he didn't speak of repentance. He spoke of being slandered, of being a strict but fair father, of being deprived of everything: work, reputation, family. He never once asked Maxim for forgiveness. He was given 5 years imprisonment. The bank fired him the same day the news leaked to the press. The court completely stripped him of parental rights and assigned alimony. Our house, which was registered in his name, was sold, and by court decision I received half the amount. This money was enough to buy a small 2-bedroom apartment in a quiet residential area on the other end of Moscow and start everything from scratch. 6 months have passed. Thanks to sessions with the psychologist, Maxim has changed greatly. From a closed, frightened child, he's again becoming that cheerful, curious boy I had almost forgotten. He went to a new school where he gradually made friends. Twice a week we went to therapy, and Anna Borisovna said his progress was simply amazing. The wounds on his soul were slowly but surely healing, that I was changing too. I continued working, but in the evenings when Maxim fell asleep, I sat down to study. I enrolled in the correspondence department of the psychology faculty. I wanted to understand what goes on in the heads of people like Sergei. And even more, I wanted to learn to help women like me and children like my son. I wanted to learn to see those very cracks in the facade of well-being that I had failed to notice for so long. I wanted my terrible experience to become salvation for someone else. One evening, when I was putting Maxim to bed, he asked me a question he had apparently been carrying for a long time. "Mom, Dad wasn't my real dad, was he?" I sat on the edge of his bed and took his hand in mine. I knew that my answer he would remember for the rest of his life. "Maxim," I began carefully, "a real family isn't determined by blood. A real family is where you're loved, where you're valued, and where you will never, under any circumstances, be hurt. It's a place where you're completely safe. I hugged my son and felt determination growing inside me. Our past was full of pain, but our future belonged only to us. Yes, his biological father betrayed and wounded him, but strangers, essentially doctors, police officers, psychologists, saved him. True family isn't DNA. It's love and responsibility. Outside the window the sun was setting, painting the sky in gentle peach tones. Our small apartment was bathed in this warm, peaceful light. Our small new world, which we were building together, was full of hope. And I knew for certain that we would manage, and that someday I would be able to extend a helping hand to another woman standing on the edge of the same abyss where I had stood. And that would be the best gratitude to all those who saved U.S.M. Why beautiful world collapsed, bearing my faith in people under the rubble. But how many such seemingly prosperous families still live behind solid iron doors, hiding quiet horror? We live in a society where it's customary not to air dirty laundry and not to meddle in other people's families. Teachers at school, grandmothers on benches by the entrance, even our relatives, I'm sure many noticed something, but preferred to stay silent so as not to seem tactless. This story made me understand that sometimes someone else's apartment is no longer a fortress, but a torture chamber. And our polite silence makes us all accomplices. What would you do in the place of our neighbors or Maxim's teacher if you suspected something? Would you stay silent out of fear of seeming intrusive? Or would you risk interfering, knowing you might be wrong? Write what you think. This is a very important conversation.